Hey guys, Dead Philosophy. Welcome to my one subscriber channel. I hope that never changes because that's just fucking hilarious. But I wanted to issue a couple of retractions and clarify a few things and kind of go through a couple points that Libra made that I have found to be either false or misleading. And this isn't an attack on Libra or anything. It's just that I wasn't able to refute these points back then because I just didn't have the information on me. I did not expect this to turn into a pseudo debate, which I definitely had a hand in doing because I didn't expect to be that confrontational. And when with the inception of this channel, I didn't think I was going to be that confrontational. I didn't want to start yelling at someone or some shit about our ideas, but it pretty much ended up happening. But near the end, it kind of simmered down. But anyway, the first thing I want to clarify is at some point in the video I said the KKK and the neo Nazis were not bad people. What I meant by this is that in the eyes of the law, they have done nothing wrong as long as they don't um, act on their views, and by act I mean like subjugating other races and such, or discrimination, things like that. I don't condone any of that. I believe that most if not all neo-Nazi and KKK arguments for white supremacy and race determinism, it at best it's pseudoscience, at worst it's just idiocy. All I meant by that was just that they are not doing anything wrong in the eyes of the law if they just think retarded shit. So I just want to make that point real clear real quick. Also, I said in the interview that prehistoric societies used to war or feud all the time. I said that there was like archaeological evidence of prehistoric battles. Battles is a very hyperbolic way of saying it. It's and I was off in the time scale as well. Tribes didn't begin raiding or feuding with each other until they became more sessile and sedentary. Instead of moving around and migrating like most hunter gathering tribes used to do, instead they just stayed in one spot and began cultivating the land around them. And as their population grew, the resources began to get more scarce. So you'd have different tribes competing for resources in the same region, and that's where raiding came from. And then that escalated into actual conflict eventually. But I was wrong on that time scale, so I wanted to say that. I probably have a couple of other things wrong in there, but fuck, it's a long video. So you know what? If you guys find something wrong with what I say, please fucking tell me. I'd love to see comments. I read all three of them. The next thing I want to do is just kind of go through a couple of her points because some of her stuff was pretty reasonable. When she got off into the whole communism thing, I'm not a communist. I think it's mostly bullshit. But I'm not gonna go into that. I'm gonna go into like the actual scientific part of our debate, which was like the first half hour, I believe, and it begins with kind of like this nature versus nurture argument where I said that because males and females are different psychologically and physiologically, like their brain makeup is different, that accounts for the aggression in males. And then she started to refute it, saying that brains between male and female are basically the same, but they do diverge in a very specific area that I want to touch on. In the male brain specifically, there is a, I guess you can call it an organ or tissue. It's called the amygdala. It's in between, I think, your midbrain and your I think it's part of your midbrain, and it basically reacts to stress and fearful situations. It's your fight or flight response. Now, this small organ, I'll just call it an organ. Uh, this organ in males is a lot more responsive to both fear and aggression, and it develops much more rapidly in males, and it has many more sites for the hormone testosterone. For any kind of male hormone, it has it has more activation sites for testosterone, which leads to the inclination that biologically men are more aggressive. And she refuted that again with brain plasticity. Now, brain plasticity basically means the ability for the brain to change over time throughout your personal lifetime, instead of how we think of an evolution where it's over generations, it changes. And your brain can actually change during your lifetime, as we saw with the taxi bus driver study. Thing with the taxi bus driver study is just that what you do in life basically dictates the amount of gray and white matter you have in your brain, and where that gray and white matter arises, where the volume of those increases depends on what you're doing. Like in the case of the taxi drivers, they had a lot more gray matter, which is unsheathed neurons, which makes it easier for them to make rapid fire connections. Mm, and as you can see, that kind of correlates with what they have to do, since they're taxis. They have to go anywhere and everywhere, just depending on who the fuck they're carrying. But with bus drivers, they didn't have that gray matter volume. So this can be seen in a lot of other studies. Like compulsive liars have a lot more gray matter, but more critical thinkers have a lot more white matter, stuff like that. So just want to touch on that a little bit. Also, with the boy girl, like the prenatal, no, the neonatal study between boys and girls, she said that there was a lot of problems with it, and how it was set up, and the experimentation, which can be debated. It was a very odd experiment, but it was a proof of concept mainly, and it basically tried to see which one gets more attention by a different gender, mechanical or biological motion. Mechanical motion being like cars or stuff like that, things that move. But biological would be like faces and stuff like that, where more boys generally went towards the mechanical direction and more girls went toward the biological, to the faces and stuff like that. This and because the differences were not that high, it does is it's just a proof of a trend that males are usually more likely to go towards the mechanical side of things, while women are more likely to go towards the biological side, those nurturing nurses, teachers kind of thing. And boys usually go towards the engineering, mechanics, STEM field kind of thing. And if it's a biological motivator, if this is biological completely, then I don't care which way. I was just trying to show that it's not all sociological, that there are some biological predispositions to both males and females. I'm not trying to say that women can't become STEM, that they can't go to STEM fields and males can't go into the more social fields. It's just a biological predisposition to them. Another thing I wanted to touch on was how Mars and Libra always went towards the sociological side of things, and saying how social pressures have a lot more impact on you than biological factors. I think it's way more balanced than that. I think there are a lot of social pressures that go into being human, but the biological factors they're roughly equal. There's no way of actually coming to any kind of numbers, but I'm gonna take the balanced position, saying like they're pretty much equal. I don't know which one goes over the other one, but from where I'm standing, they're kind of the same. I lean more towards biological because that has hundreds of thousands, millions of years of evolution behind it. So I usually go more towards the biological side. But to say that sociological pressures are what make you, basically, is it doesn't work out that way. At least not in the studies I've seen, especially with the gender reassignment experiments back in, I think it was like 80s, 70s or 80s, where this man Bruce had his penis destroyed during a circumcision, I believe, and they reassigned him to a female. They reassigned him as a female, and they raised him a female with a female name, female clothes, socialized him in every way to be female, yet his biological functions and all that stuff caused him to have really bad gender dysphoria by his teens, until he figured out that eventually he was actually a boy, and then it all just clicked for him after all the therapy and stuff like that. And then he got reassigned as a male and went on to live his life. When he got a wife and then killed himself, but oh well, nobody has a fucking happy ending anyway. Just his is just really fucking sad. Anyway, so that's I don't think that the sociological side is as powerful as the biological side, and she probably puts that on. She probably has a very opposite view of me, of my ideas. I mean, also another thing that she says is prehistoric societies were matriarchal, and I haven't found much archaeological evidence for this, um, or anthropological evidence for this. Like, there are a lot of matrilineal and matrilocal societies, meaning matrilineal means they follow descent through the mother's line, and basically every when you marry, instead of the girl going to the guy's side and stuff and being with his family, the guy goes to the girl's side with her family. That's basically all it means. But those societies are usually more the exception than the rule in human history. Most hunting and gathering tribes were actually egalitarian and patrilineal, meaning that there's a very loose hierarchy, if there was any. Like, there might be like some guy in the tribe that they respected, and he kind of called the shots, like kind of like an elder of sorts. But there was no matriarch or patriarch of the tribes at that time. You don't get that until you get into chiefdoms. But matriarchal societies don't have much archaeological or anthropological evidence. But none of us were there, and it's really hard to find archaeological evidence of early humans, because we lived in places that were very hard to find, like actual like fossils and artifacts and things that can get preserved. We didn't stay in climates that allowed us for a lot of preservation of those artifacts or any evidence of hierarchy. So it's really hard to tell. And what we have to base this on really is the tribes and societies that we see now, the most primitive ones that we could find, the ones that were basically untouched by civilization until the 1900s. Those were our basis for early humanity, and still are, since we don't have a time machine at this point. That's the best we can do. So I'm not gonna rule out the idea that there were probably matriarchal societies. It's just that remnants of those were a lot smaller compared to the remnants of the patriarchal societies. So I don't know. It might be it seems to be more the exception than the rule. So I'm just gonna go with most societies were patriarchal, and even saying patriarchal is kind of rough, because back in prehistoric societies, egalitarianism basically means that there was no hierarchy. So it's really hard to have a patriarchy without any kind of hierarchy, because that's what a patriarchy means, a hierarchy with the father at the top, or the male at the top. That's all it really means. So without a hierarchy, it's kind of hard to tell that. When you get into chiefdoms more, then that is easily identifiable as patriarch or whatever. But prehistoric societies is really hard to tell. And I think that's about it. Like I said, it's a long ass fucking video. So if anybody finds something that they think I should clarify or something like that, I will definitely go into that. I'll probably do a whole video on on it if necessary. But yeah, this has been a fucking long video too. Jesus Christ, I hate editing these fucking things. Well, I'll see all one of your subscribers later.